ẹni ṣeré kó múra sílẹ̀. ẹni ṣèkà kó múra síta. àtọ̀rẹ́ àti ìgbà ìkan ò ní gbẹ́. ènìyàn ò fẹ́ ní fọ̀rọ̀ bí òṣòrí ẹni.
Who is that? I am coming.
Aji sent me to remind you. The Ile-Ife Road money is due in 2 weeks, not 1 day more.
Tell him I have not forgotten. The contract pays out soon. I will settle everything.
Make sure of it, Ajiboye. Alhaji does not like to visit a man's house twice. Next time, he may not knock at the back door.
No one, my dear. One of the laborers, confused about which house was mine. Go back to sleep.
Taiwo, this brush belongs to both of us, not only to you. Kehinde, I picked it up first this morning.
If you two don't stop, nobody is going anywhere today. Papa, you look like you didn't sleep at all.
Just business, Mike. The Ile-Ife Road contract, much on my mind.
Nothing for you children to worry about.
Everything is fine, Fola. By next month, all our troubles will be finished. Family is the only wealth that matters. Remember that, all of you.
Bye-bye.
We are running late.
Banjo, you have checked that beam 3 times already. What is troubling you today? I only want everything perfect. This payment cannot be late. Banjo, is something wrong? You have not been yourself these past weeks. Bola, if anything ever happens to me... Why are you talking like this? Forget I said it. Let us finish here. All right, let's head inside and check.
Get back! Get back! Banjo! Banjo, talk to me! Someone bring a vehicle! Quickly! Quickly!
Mr. Bola, why are you looking at me like that?
Sister Fola, is Banjo. There was an accident at the site.
No, tell me he's only injured.
We got him to the hospital as he did not survive it.
What is happening? Somebody talk to me.
Banjo, how will I carry these children alone?
Why did he have to leave us like this?
God knows best, my son. What is this? This loan agreement? Pledged as collateral? What have you done? Who is there?
Weeks passed the way grief always seems to pass, in a blur of visitors who came and eventually stopped coming, of quiet nights, of a house learning to be quiet in a new and terrible way. One such night, long after the children had gone to sleep, Mrs. Ajiboye sat alone at the table, sorting through her husband's belongings by lamplight, his shirts, his old work boots, the small, ordinary things a man leaves behind without ever meaning them to become so heavy. Her hand brushed against a folded cloth on the shelf, and it fell away to reveal something she did not recognize, a small, locked metal box. She searched among his things and found a small key tied to a string around his rosary. Her hands trembled as she turned it in the lock. Inside, a stack of papers. She lifted the first one and began to read, her expression sliding slowly from confusion into horror. Loan agreement, she read aloud, barely above a whisper. The family house at Mokola, pledged as collateral. Signed, Banjo Ajiboye. She looked up, as though he might somehow answer her. Banjo, what have you done? A knock sounded at the door, sharp, deliberate, nothing like the gentle knuckles of a neighbor. She froze, the papers clashed to her chest. A second knock, harder. Who is there? She called, her voice unsteady. Good evening, madam, came the reply. My name is Izioka. I have come on behalf of our Haji Rezak. I believe your late husband left something unfinished with us. Mrs. Ajiboye looked down at the papers in her hand, then at the door, fear and something fiercer than fear moving across her face in equal measure. She set the papers down, straightened her back, and walked toward the door. Whatever it is, she said quietly, steeling herself, he will have to speak to me now. Her hand closed around the handle. She did not yet know what waited on the other side. She only knew that whatever it was, she would not face it as a frightened woman. She would face it as Banjo Ajiboye's wife, and as the mother who had already buried the man she loved, and had nothing left to lose but her family. The door opened. Izioka stood on the other side, calm as ever, his hands folded before him. Good evening, madam, he said. Forgive the late hour. It is a strange hour, Mrs. Ajiboye answered, for a stranger to be knocking on a widow's door. I do not enjoy this errand, madam, Azioka said. But business is business. Your husband signed an agreement with my Oga, Alhaji Razak. £240 against this house, to be repaid before the end of this month. My husband, she said, fighting to keep her voice even, never mentioned any loan to me. That does not change what is written on the paper, madam. He paused, his tone softening, almost gentle, which somehow made it worse. I will return in 3 days for your answer. He turned and disappeared into the dark. Mrs. Ajiboye shut the door slowly, leaning against it, breathing hard, the paper still trembling in her hand. Mike came downstairs early the next morning and found his mother already at the table, the paper spread before her, her face hollow from a night without sleep. Mama. You didn't sleep. It's nothing, Mike, she said quickly, gathering the papers. Go and eat something before your boss. But he had already seen enough. He lifted one of the papers before she could stop him and read aloud, disbelief creeping into his voice. Loan agreement, house at Mokola pledged as collateral. He looked up at her. Mama, what is this? She sighed, the weight of it finally breaking through the composure she had been holding since the night before. Your father borrowed money before he died. Against this house. I only found the papers last night. Anger rose in Mike, more fear than blame, though it did not sound that way. Why would Papa do such a thing without telling you? Without telling any of us? Do not raise your voice at your father's memory in this house, Mike, she said. Whatever his reasons, he is not here to explain them. It is left to me now. Emmanuel entered just then, sensing the tension in the room. What is going on? Ask Mama, Mike said bitterly. Apparently we may lose this house. Sarah and Mary appeared in the doorway, having overheard everything, their young faces falling. Lose the house? Sarah asked. Mama, is that true? Mrs. Ajiboye rose to her feet, gathering herself, and looked at each of her children in turn. Listen to me, all of you. Whatever storm your father has left behind, I will face it. I did not survive burying my husband only to hand my children's home to a stranger without a fight. She softened, just slightly. But I need to know I can trust each of you to stay calm while I find a way through this. A tense silence settled over the room. Mike looked away first, nodding reluctantly. Emmanuel stepped closer to his mother's side. I am with you, Mama, he said. Whatever you need. Later that day, Mrs. Ajiboye sat in Bola's mother's sitting room with Bola and Johnny, the loan papers laid out on the table between them. Did either of you know about this? She asked. Banjo owing money to Alhaji Razak. Johnny and Bola exchanged a guilty glance. Fola, Johnny said carefully, we knew he was under pressure these past months. The Ilife Road contract client was slow to pay him. He mentioned once that he had found a way to manage, we did not know he meant this. Alhaji Razak is not a man to take lightly, Fola, Bola added, troubled. He lends to contractors who are desperate, at high interest, and he does not forgive a missed payment. Then tell me plainly, she said. Is there any way to fight this? Any way the agreement can be void? Johnny hesitated. There is one thing. Banjo told me once, in passing, that the contract payment from Ilife Road was almost complete before he died. If the client still owes that final payment to his estate, it could be enough to clear the debt entirely. A flicker of hope crossed her face. Then that is where I will start. Who is this client? Bola and Johnny exchanged another uneasy look. Fola, Bola said, the client is Chief Adewale Okikiola. And he is not an easy man to meet, let alone to press for payment. Mrs. Ajiboye's jaw set with new determination. Easy or not, she said. I will meet him myself. That evening, at Ajiboye stores in Dogby Market, Mrs. Ajiboye was closing up alone when the bell above the door jingled. Azioka stepped inside, unhurried, glancing around at the shelves. "You said 3 days," she said, stiffening. "I was passing by," he said. "Alhaji asked me to remind you, kindly, that time is shorter than it feels, madam. Especially for a woman running a business alone." "Tell your Alhaji I am not without resources," she answered, refusing to be shaken. "There is a payment still owed to my husband's estate. Once it is released, his debt will be settled in full." Azioka paused, a flicker of genuine surprise crossing his face before he caught himself. "I did not realize you already knew about that payment." Something in his tone caught her attention. Her eyes narrowed. "Why do you say it like that, Azioka? Is there something about that payment I should know?" "Nothing at all, madam," he said, recovering his smooth composure. "Only that money has a way of disappearing before it reaches the hands it was meant for." He tipped his head politely. 3 days. I will return." He left. Mrs. Ajiboye stood very still in the empty shop, replaying his words in her mind, suspicion dawning slowly across her face. "Disappearing before it reaches the hands it was meant for," she murmured to herself. "What are you not telling me, Azioka?" The next morning, Mrs. Ajiboye dressed with more care than she had in weeks, her best lace wrapper, an elegant gaily wound carefully at the mirror, gold hoops at her ears. Emmanuel watched from the doorway, worry written plainly across his young face. "Mama, let me come with you," he said. "You should not go to a man like Chief Okikiola alone." "No, Emmanuel," she answered, adjusting her gaily without looking away from her reflection. "If I bring my son to beg on my behalf, he will think a woman cannot stand for her own family. I want him to see exactly who he is dealing with." "And if he refuses to see you?" A faint, hard smile touched her lips. "Then I will make myself impossible to ignore." She picked up a folder holding Banjo's contract papers and receipts, tucking it firmly under one arm. "Watch your sisters," she told him. "Tell Mike, when he returns from the university, that I have gone to collect what belongs to this family." And with that, she stepped out into the morning with quiet, unshakable resolve. The gates of Chief Adewale Okikiola's compound rose tall and ornate above the road, iron bars framing a glimpse of tropical garden and a stately white house beyond. A clerk named Ton stood guard at the entrance, clipboard in hand, unimpressed. "Chief does not see people without an appointment, madam," he said. "Then tell your chief," Mrs. Ajiboye replied, calm and unmoving, that Mrs. Ajiboye, widow of the contractor who built his Alife Road house, has come about an unpaid balance. "I am happy to wait at this gate all day if I must." Ton hesitated, unsettled by her composure, and disappeared inside. A long pause followed before he returned, visibly surprised. "Chief will see you," he said. "Follow me." Inside, Chief Okikiola sat with the practiced ease of a wealthy man, dressed in rich abode, a fan resting in one hand. His wife hovered near the doorway, watchful and quiet. "Oh, the wife of Ajiboye," the chief said, his warmth a little too smooth. "A terrible tragedy. What happened to your husband?" "Please, sit." Mrs. Ajiboye remained standing. "Thank you, chief, but I will not take much of your time. My husband completed the house on Alife Road for you before he died. I have come about the final balance owed to his estate." "Balance?" A practiced frown crossed his face, a bit too quickly. "My dear woman, that account was settled in full. My clerk processed the final payment weeks ago. Her steadiness here should feel unshakable. This is her strongest moment yet." "Then perhaps you can show me the receipt, chief," she said, opening her folder. "Because I have gone through my husband's records carefully, and no such payment ever reached his hands, or mine." A flicker of tension crossed the chief's face. His wife shifted near the doorway, suddenly very interested in the floor. "Ton handles these matters," the chief said, waving a hand. I do not concern myself with receipts, madam. If there has been some administrative delay, I will have it looked into. Chief, with respect, she pressed, gently relentless, my husband is dead, and I am fighting to keep the roof over my 4 children's heads. I did not come here for promises to look into anything. I came for what is owed. A tense silence stretched between them. The chief studied her, recalculating. Come back in 2 days, he said carefully. I will have Ton prepare the figures myself. 2 days, chief, she said, holding his gaze a moment longer before turning to leave. I will remember that you said so. 2 days later, Mrs. Ajiboye stood once more before Chief Okikiola, his clerk Ton hovering nearby with a ledger clutched to his chest. Oh, Mrs. Ajiboye, the chief said, too pleasant. Punctual. Ton has the figures ready. Ton read stiffly from the ledger, avoiding her eyes. According to our records, madam, only £40 remain on the contract at the time of your husband's passing. That amount was paid directly to him in cash, 1 week before the accident. £40. Mrs. Ajiboye's voice stayed steady, but sharp. Turned, my husband kept careful records of every contract he ever signed. According to his own papers, the outstanding balance on that house was £200, not 40. Madam, I only report what is written, Ton began, flustered. Ton's ledger is the official record, Mrs. Ajiboye, the chief interrupted smoothly. I am sorry if your husband's private notes say otherwise, but I cannot pay a debt twice on the word of a dead man's memory. A long, cold silence passed between them. Mrs. Ajiboye held the chief's gaze, unwilling to be the one who looked away first. You built a beautiful house on my husband's labor, chief, she said quietly, deliberately. I pray it stands longer than the lie you have just told me in it. She turned and walked out with her head held high. Behind her, the chief's composure cracked slightly as the door shut. She is more trouble than Alhaji warned me about, he muttered to Tond. Outside the compound gates, Mrs. Ajiboye walked briskly, shaken but composed. Mrs. Okikiola hurried out after her, glancing nervously back toward the house. Mrs. Ajiboye, wait, she called, low and urgent. Madam. Mrs. Ajiboye, she turned, cautious. I cannot say much, Mrs. Okikiola said. My husband would ruin me if he knew I spoke to you. But the payment was £200, not 40. It left this house in full, in an envelope, delivered to Alhaji Rezak's man, the one they call Izioka. Delivered to Izioka. Mrs. Ajiboye's shock was plain on her face. Why would my husband's payment go to a moneylender instead of to Banjo directly? I do not know the full story, Mrs. Okikiola said quickly. Only that my husband owed Alhaji a debt of his own, and it seems arrangements were made between them. Please, do not tell anyone I spoke to you. She hurried back through the gate before Mrs. Ajiboye could respond. Mrs. Ajiboye stood alone on the road, the pieces beginning to form a devastating picture. Alhaji Rezak did not only lend my husband money, she murmured to herself, cold realization dawning. He took back what was never his to take. That evening, at the family house, Mike paced the sitting room, now aware of the full situation from his brother Emmanuel. His mother entered, exhausted, and he turned on her, more from fear than anger. Mama, Emmanuel told me everything. A loan. A debt. Now you are telling me Papa's own payment was stolen by the same man threatening to take our house. I did not want to burden you with this while you are trying to focus on your studies, Mike, she said wearily. I am the eldest son, Mama, he said, firm. This is not a burden to keep from me, it is a burden to carry with you. She studied him a moment, seeing, perhaps for the first time, the man he was becoming. All right, she said, softening. Then help me think. If Izioka received that payment on Alhaji's instruction, there may be a record of it somewhere, some proof this money was already collected against the loan. Then I will find it, Mike said, resolute. I have a friend at the university studying law. He can advise us on what proof we would need. And Mama, if it comes to it, I am not afraid to confront this Azioka myself. No, Mike, she said, gripping his arm urgently. Promise me you will not go near that man alone. We have already lost your father. I will not risk losing you to a man like Alhaji Rezak's temper. A knock came at the door, 3 sharp, deliberate raps. Both froze. Mrs. Ajiboye moved to answer it, Mike stepping protectively beside her. She opened the door. Azioka stood there, alone, his usual calm now edged with something colder. Good evening, he said flatly. I understand you have been asking questions at Chief Okikeola's house. I have been asking for what belongs to my family, she answered, steady, though her grip on the door tightened. Nothing more. Azioka's gaze moved between her and Mike. Be careful, madam, he said. Some questions, once asked loudly enough, have a way of costing more than the answer is worth. He paused. One day remains. I trust you will have made your decision about the house. He turned and disappeared into the night. Mrs. Ajiboye shut the door, leaning against it, Mike's jaw tight with barely controlled anger beside her. Mama, that man just threatened you in your own doorway, he said, low and furious. I heard him, Mike, she answered quietly. Then, still returning to her voice, and tomorrow, when he comes back, he will find a woman who is done being afraid. At the University of Ibadan, beneath the shade of a white tree, Mike sat with his friend Teo, law book spread open between them. Mike, Teo said, flipping through a notebook of scrawled notes, I have gone through everything you told me. If what Mrs. Okikeola said is true, that the £200 from the chief was paid directly to Alhaji Rezak's man before your father's death, then Alhaji Rezak cannot lawfully collect the same debt twice. Meaning? Mike leaned forward. Meaning if that payment was applied against your father's loan, the debt may already be settled, or very close to it. Alhaji has no right to threaten your mother's house for a debt that was already being repaid. A flicker of hope crossed Mike's face, tempered quickly by worry. But we have no proof. Only Mrs. Okikeola's words, spoken in secret. She will never repeat it publicly, she said as much herself. Teo closed the notebook. Then you need something else. A receipt. A ledger entry. Anything with Alhaji's name on it acknowledging that payment. Without it, this is only a story 2 women whispered outside the gate. Then I will find that proof myself, Teo, Mike said, standing, resolute. Thank you. Mike, Teo called after him, uneasy. Men like Alhaji Rezak do not leave paperwork lying around for people to find. Be careful how you go looking for it. That evening, Mrs. Ajiboye addressed Bola and Johnny in her sitting room, resolve hardened on her face. I am done waiting for Azioka to knock on my door like a thief in the night, she said. I want to meet Alhaji Rezak myself. Face to face. Fola, that is not wise, Bola said, alarmed. A man like that does not entertain widows arguing figures with him. Then he will meet a widow who refuses to be silent, she said firmly. Johnny, you knew Banjo's dealings better than anyone. Can you arrange it? Johnny hesitated, reluctant, but respecting her too much to refuse. I can try. Alhaji respects boldness, if nothing else. But Fola, go prepared. Do not go to him with anger. Go to him with facts. I intend to, she said quietly. Alhaji Rezak's compound was modest on the outside, but within, it was quietly opulent, fine rugs underfoot, a slow ceiling fan turning overhead, stacks of ledgers resting on a low table. Alhaji Rezak himself sat with a calm, unreadable manner, watching Mrs. Ajiboye across the room. Azioka stood near the wall, silent. Mrs. Ajiboye, he said. Your husband spoke of you often. He said you were a woman who could run a market stall better than most men run a company. My husband also trusted you with a debt he never mentioned to his own wife, Alhaji, she answered, unsoftened by the compliment. I have come to understand exactly what that debt still is, and what has already been paid against it. A slow, unbothered smile touched his face. You have been busy, madam. I know that Chief Okikela's final payment on the Alife Road contract, £200, was delivered to your man Azioka before my husband died, she said. That is precisely the amount of the loan you claim is still outstanding. That payment was collected as interest, madam, Alhaji Razak said carefully. Not principal. Your husband's debt remains as it was. Then show me the ledger entry that says so, Alhaji, she said, steady, refusing to be cowed. Because if that payment was never properly recorded, if it simply vanished into your account as if my husband owed you nothing at all, then this is not a debt collection. It is a theft dressed up as one. A long, dangerous silence followed. Azioka shifted against the wall. You are a bold woman, Alhaji Razak said quietly, dropping his pleasant mask slightly, to accuse me of theft in my own house, Mrs. Ajiboye. I buried my husband, Alhaji, she said, holding his gaze, unflinching. I have very little left to fear. A tense beat passed before Alhaji Razak leaned back, gesturing for Azioka to bring a ledger. He opened it slowly, scanning a page, his expression unreadable. I will review my records personally, he said, closing the book. You will have my answer in 3 days. 3 days, Alhaji, she said, rising to leave. Just as your mom promised me 3 days before. And 3 days before that. She turned to go. As she reached the door, Alhaji Razak spoke again, quieter now, almost to himself, but just loud enough for her to hear. Your husband was not a dishonest man, Mrs. Ajiboye, he said. Only a desperate one. Desperate men make arrangements they do not always survive to explain. Mrs. Ajiboye froze at the door, turning back slowly, a new and terrible question forming on her face. What do you mean by that, Alhaji? She asked carefully. Nothing, madam, he said, waving a hand, the mask sliding back into place. Only that grief makes us search for villains where there are sometimes only accidents. Good evening. She held his gaze a moment longer, unconvinced, before finally leaving. Alhaji Razak watched her go, then turned to Azioka, his pleasant expression gone entirely. Find out how much Ton has told the chief's wife, he said, low and cold. And find out how much she has told Ajiboye's widow. Yes, Alhaji, Azioka said, nodding, uneasy. In the side garden of Chief Okikela's compound, Mrs. Okikela knelt among the flowers at dusk, tense, distracted. She did not hear Azioka approach until he was already close. Madam, he said, mild but pointed. A pleasant evening for a walk in the garden. Azioka, she said, startled, composing herself. I did not hear you come in. Alhaji asked me to pass a small word to you, he said. He knows the Ajiboye woman has been, well informed, lately. About payments. About ledgers. I do not know what you mean, she said, carefully neutral. Of course not. A thin smile. Then his tone dropped, colder. Only, a woman in your position should remember whose name is on the deed to this house, and whose money built the garden she is standing in. Alhaji has been patient with your husband's arrangements. That patience has limits. He inclined his head and departed. Mrs. Okikela stood frozen, fear and guilt warring on her face, before hurrying inside. Across the city, at the University of Ibadan, Mike sat with Teo, a rough hand-drawn map spread between them. Alhaji keeps his ledgers in that back room, Teo said, pointing, the one Azioka brought the book from when your mother visited. If there is a record of Chief Okikela's payment, it will be there. And if I am caught looking for it? Mike asked, grim. Then you will learn firsthand why men fear Alhaji Razak more than they fear the police, Mike, Teo said bluntly. I am not saying this to frighten you. I am saying it so you go in with your eyes open. My father died confused and afraid, keeping a secret from the woman who loved him most, Mike said, steeling himself. I will not let my mother live the rest of her life the same way, not knowing the truth. Teo nodded after a bit. Then we do this carefully. I know one of Alhaji's junior clerks from church, a small man, easily frightened, easily paid. He owes me a favor. He may be able to get us 5 minutes alone with that ledger. Then let us not waste the favor, Mike said, a spark of resolve in his eyes. That evening, at the family house, Sarah, Mary, and Emmanuel sat with their mother, the mood heavy. Mama, is it true we might lose the house? Sarah asked. Bonmi at school said her mother heard people from the market talking about it. There are people trying to take advantage of hard times, Sarah, Mrs. Ajiboye said, measured. But I am fighting it. That is all any of you need to carry right now. Where would we even go, if? Mary began, quiet, scared. We are not going anywhere, her mother said firmly, cutting off the fear before it could grow. This is your father's house, built with his own hands and his own sweat. I did not survive burying him to hand it to a stranger. Emmanuel, older than his years lately, reached over and squeezed Mary's hand. Mama is right, he said. And Mike is working on it too, with his law friend. We are not facing this alone. A bit of fragile comfort settled over the room until the front door opened. Mike entered, tense, dust on his trousers, moving quickly past them toward the stairs. Mike, his mother said, sharp, immediately alert. Where have you been? He paused, choosing his words carefully. With Teo, Mama. Working on proof. That is all I can say for now. Michael Ajiboye. Look at me. Her worry hardened into command. What have you done? A tense silence passed between them. He met her eyes, torn between protecting her and needing her to trust him. I am trying to get the proof we need, Mama, he said quietly. The same way you went to Chief Okikele's house yourself. I am my father's son too. Before she could respond, a sound came from outside, a vehicle stopping abruptly, urgent footsteps, then a frantic knock. Emmanuel opened the door. Johnny stood there, breathless, alarmed. Fola, forgive me for coming so late, he said. It is Bola. Some of Alhaji's men found him asking questions near the moneylender's compound tonight. They roughed him up badly before I could reach him. Is he alive? Mrs. Ajiboye gasped. Johnny, is he? He will live, Johnny said. But Fola. He glanced meaningfully at Mike. They were asking him if he knew anything about a young man snooping around Alhaji's back room tonight. Every eye in the room turned to Mike. His face paled. Mrs. Ajiboye's hand rose to her mouth, the full danger of what her son had done finally landing. Mike, she said, barely a whisper. What did you take from that ledger? Slowly, with trembling hands, Mike reached into his jacket and produced a single-folded, water-stained page, torn hastily from a larger book. He set it on the table. Enough to prove the debt was already paid, Mama, he said, his voice shaking. But I think they know it is missing. Long before sunrise, Mrs. Ajiboye sat alone at the table, the torn ledger page still before her under lamplight, having clearly not slept. Mike came down the stairs quietly and found her there. Mama, you should rest. How can I rest, Mike, she said, not looking up, when my son nearly got himself killed for a piece of paper. He sat across from her. I did it to protect you. To protect all of us. I know that, she said, torn between anger and love as she finally looked at him. That is what frightens me most. She softened. Your father used to take risks like this, quiet ones, hidden ones, thinking he was protecting me by carrying the weight alone. Look where it led him. I am not Papa, Mama, he said quietly. She reached across the table and took his hand. No. But you are his son. And I have already buried one Ajiboye man who thought silence was strength. I will not bury another. A long, tender silence passed between them. She looked down at the page again. Whatever comes from this now, she said, resolute, we face it together. No more secrets in this house. From anyone. Mike nodded, some of the guilt easing from his shoulders. At the chief's compound, Adewale Okikela paced while Ton stood nervously near the door. Mrs. Okikela entered, pale. Adewale, she said, Azioka came to the garden last night. He knows I have been concerned about this matter. You spoke to that woman, the chief rounded on her, afraid himself. I told you to stay out of this. I told her the truth because it was the truth, Adewale, she said, steadying herself. What is happening to that family is a sin, and you have let it happen under your own roof to protect yourself from a debt that was never hers to pay. Alhaji Razak owns half of what I have built, my dear, the chief said, quieter now, ashamed but still afraid. If I cross him openly, I lose everything, this house, my contracts, perhaps worse. Ton spoke up, hesitant. Chief, if it becomes known that a page is missing from Alhaji's ledger, and that it proves the Ajiboye debt was settled, he will not only blame the widow's son. He may suspect this house helped them. The chief sat down heavily, torn, cornered by his own compromises. Then we say nothing, he said, low. We know nothing. Whatever the widow does with what she has, it did not come from this house. Do you both understand me? Mrs. Okikela looked at him with quiet disappointment, but said nothing more. At Ajiboye stores in Dugby Market, the shop stood strangely quiet, shelves partly overturned, goods scattered as though someone had searched in haste. Mrs. Ajiboye and Emmanuel surveyed the damage, shaken. Mama, Emmanuel said, kneeling to gather scattered things, nothing looks stolen. Only, disturbed. Searched. They were looking for the page, Emmanuel, she said, quietly furious. Reminding me they can reach into any corner of our lives whenever they please. Johnny arrived hurriedly, having heard. Fuller. I came as soon as I heard. Are you hurt? Is Emmanuel? We are unharmed, Johnny, she said. Frightened, but unharmed. Her voice hardened. This ends now. I will not spend the rest of my life waiting for the next thing they choose to break. Fuller, what are you planning? He asked, careful. I am taking that ledger page to the district officer myself, she said. Whatever protection Alhaji Razak believes his money buys him, let us see if it extends past the government office. Fuller, a man like Alhaji may have friends in that office too, Johnny warned. You could be walking into another trap. Then I will have walked into it with my eyes open, Johnny, she said, resolute, which is more than my husband ever did. She picked up a fallen tin and set it back on the shelf with deliberate calm, a woman refusing to be undone. The old railway warehouse stood at the edge of Ibadan, its crate stacked in shadow, a single lamp swinging faintly from the ceiling. Mrs. Ajiboye entered flanked by Mike and Johnny, the ledger page held firmly in her hand. Azioka stood waiting alone. There was no sign of Alhaji Razak. Where is Alhaji? She asked, wary. Bola said he wished to finish this himself. Alhaji does not need to trouble himself with every small matter, madam, Azioka said. I can finish this on his behalf. This is not a small matter, Azioka, she said, sharp. It is my family's home. He stepped closer, his eyes flicking to the page in her hand. Give me that paper, madam. It does not belong to you. Mike stepped in front of his mother, protective. She is not giving you anything until Alhaji Razak is standing in this room himself. Azioka's mask cracks, desperation beneath the calm. You think this is about Alhaji's pride, boy? Asioka said, a humorless laugh escaping him. His voice dropped, something raw slipping through. That page proves a payment of £200 was collected against your father's debt. If Alhaji ever sees it, he will ask where the money went in his own books. A terrible silence followed. Mrs. Ajiboye's eyes narrowed as understanding dawned. It never reached him at all, did it? She said slowly. You kept it for yourself, Asioka. You let my husband's debt sit unpaid in Alhaji's books while the money that would have cleared it sat in your own pocket. Asioka's composure cracked, exposed. You were supposed to be a frightened widow who signed over her house quietly, he said, backing toward the crates. Instead you went asking questions at the chief's compound, at Alhaji's own house. So you sent men to beat Bola, Johnny said, stepping forward, furious. You searched for less shop. You have been protecting your own theft this whole time, not Alhaji's money. Asioka pulled a short blade from his waistband, backing further into the shadows. Nobody moves, he said. That page comes to me, and none of you ever say Asioka's name in connection with any of this again. Mrs. Ajiboye did not step back. She held the page higher, out of easy reach, her voice steady despite the danger. I have buried my husband, Asioka, she said. I have watched my son bleed for less than this page. You will have to take it from a dead woman's hand, because I will not hand it to a thief who let my family suffer for his own greed. A tense, unbearable pause stretched through the warehouse until a voice broke it from the entrance. Put the blade down, Asioka. Alhaji Rezak stepped into the lamplight. Asioka froze, blade still raised, staring at his employer in shock. Alhaji, he stammered, I did not know you would come tonight. Clearly not, Alhaji Rezak said, quiet and dangerous. I have been standing at that door long enough to hear everything, Asioka. £200. In your pocket. While I believe the dead man's family still owed me an honest debt. Asioka lowered the blade slowly, all bravado collapsing into panic. Alhaji, I can explain. You will explain to the police, Alhaji Rezak said, ice in his voice, not to me. Johnny moved quickly, wrestling the blade from Asioka's loosened grip before he could react further. Mike held him firmly by the arm. Asioka sagged, defeated. Moments later, Alhaji Rezak stood before Mrs. Ajiboye, the ledger page now in his own hands, studying it with a grim, humbled expression. Your husband's debt was cleared the same week Chief Okikola's payment went out, he said quietly. Asioka simply never recorded it, and let the pressure continue, so that no one would ask where the money had gone. Then my family owes you nothing, she said, steady, though exhausted. He was silent for a long moment, something like shame crossing his face. No, madam. If anything, I owe your family an apology I do not know how to properly give. I sent threats to your door over a debt that did not exist, because I trusted the wrong man to manage it honestly. Alhaji, she said, quiet and unexpectedly gentle, I did not come here tonight for an apology. I came to protect my children's home. She paused. But I will tell you what my husband believed, since he cannot tell you himself. A man is not measured by how much he is owed, but by what he is willing to make right once he learns the truth. He looked at her for a long moment, something shifting in him. Then let it be made right, he said, nodding slowly. The loan is void. And Asioka's theft will be repaid to your family, in full, from his own wages if it takes him 10 years to finish it. He handed her back the torn ledger page, a strange, quiet respect in the gesture. Go home to your children, Mrs. Ajiboye, he said. You have carried more than enough for one widow. She nodded once, and turned to Mike and Johnny. The three of them left the warehouse together, leaving Alhaji Rezak standing over the defeated Asioka, the swinging lamp casting long shadows behind them. The following evening, at the Ajiboye family house, the whole family gathered, Sarah, Mary, and Emmanuel rising anxiously as Mrs. Ajiboye and Mike walked through the door. Bola, bandaged but smiling, sat with Johnny near the table. "Mama." Mary rushed to her mother. "Is it true? Is the house safe?" "The house is safe, Mary," Mrs. Ajiboye said, a tired, radiant smile breaking across her face. "All of it. Truly, finally safe." Sarah hugged her tightly. Emmanuel exhaled a breath he seemed to have held for weeks. Mike caught Bola's eye and nodded a quiet thanks. "So it was never truly about Papa owing a fortune," Emmanuel said, quietly, almost disbelieving. "It was one man's greed the whole time." "Yes," Mrs. Ajiboye said, settling into her chair, weary but at peace. "And I think, in the end, that is a harder truth than if it had been some grand conspiracy, Emmanuel. Your father was not careless, nor foolish. He only trusted the wrong man in a difficult season, as any of us might." She looked around the table, at her children, at Bola's bruised but present face, at Johnny's steady loyalty. "Your father used to say this family was his greatest wealth," she said softly. "I did not fully understand what he meant until I watched all of you, Mike risking himself for proof, Emmanuel and the girls holding this house together while I fought outside it, Johnny and Bola bleeding for a friend who is no longer here to thank them." Her voice thickened. "That is the wealth he meant. Not money. Not houses. This." A long, warm silence followed. Mike quietly placed the ledger page in the center of the table, no longer a weapon, only a strange relic of what they survived. "Maybe we keep this, Mama," he said gently. "Not as a wound. As a reminder of what we did not let anyone take from us." She nodded, covering his hand with her own. Slowly, the rest of the family reached in as well, Sarah, Mary, Emmanuel, hands overlapping on the table around the small torn page, a strange and quiet family portrait.